Good evening. My name is Mia Johnson, and I am the National Health Committee Chair for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated. I'd like to now introduce the NCBW First National Vice President, Sarita S. Tinsley.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for this educational discussion. Our theme, Understanding Cancer Clinical Trials, Advancing Health in Black Communities. I am honored to introduce the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Inc., National President, Virginia W. Harris. Virginia W. Harris is currently serving on her second term as National President of NCBW. She was first elected in September of 2017 and re-elected in October 2019. She has served at both local and national levels and has been a member of the Metropolitan Atlanta chapter for over 27 years. President Harris is a highly respected public servant and community leader who exemplifies stature, poise, and grace. Under her leadership, more than 19,500 youth have served in NCBW's mentoring and STEM programs. 170,000 plus people have participated in NCBW's workshops, training, and special events. And over $800,000 has been awarded in local scholarships to deserving students. More than 75,000 people were served via the NCBW voter registration, strategic partnerships, and community forums. Tonight, it is my honor to present to you NCBW's National President, Virginia W. Harris.
Thank you, Madam First Vice President, for that very kind introduction. It is my honor to bring greetings on behalf of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated and all of the activist women in our 62 chapters in 27 states that comprise the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. The National Cancer Institute reported that cancer is one of the top leading causes of death for both African-American men and women. Many of us know someone in our lives who have been affected in some way by cancer. But even though cancer affects both Black and white American at close to the same rate, studies have shown that Black Americans are significantly less likely to receive the latest treatment and are more likely to experience treatment delays. This is why the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is attempting to relieve some of the health disparities surrounding cancer by taking charge on educating the public about cancer clinical trials. We need advocates for Black women to be included in these clinical trials so that we can ensure that they are included in the cure. This is why our partnership is so important. NCBW partnership with LLS help advance the health equity inequities that bring us all to a step closer to discovering the cure that will save millions. Thank you, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, for this opportunity. The next voice you hear is Mia Johnson, Chair of the National Health Committee and facilitators for today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam President. Now we will take a poll to see just how much we know about cancer trials, followed by our panel discussion and a testimonial you don't want to miss.
All right, good evening, everyone. In just a moment, you'll start seeing the poll pop up on the screen. So if you're joining us via Zoom, we definitely want to hear from you. We want to test your knowledge on how much you know about clinical trials. So in just a moment, you'll see the poll pop up on the screen directly in front of you. If you don't see it in front of you, look towards the bottom of your Zoom toolbar on the right-hand side, and you may see it flashing there as well. All right, so the poll is live. So the first question is, what are clinical trials? Is it A, at-home doctor visits, B, class course to educate the public on science, C, clinical trials are carefully controlled research studies, etc., or D, none of the above? And you have about 10 more seconds to answer that first question before we move on to the next. Good luck. All right, so we've closed out that first question, and the correct answer was C, clinical trials are carefully controlled research studies. All right, so I hope you got that correct. Let's move on to the next one. All right, so the next question is, clinical trials are only appropriate for patients who don't have any other options. Is that true or is that false? We'll give you about 30 seconds to answer. All right, we have about half of us have answered. All right, the time is ticking, just a few more seconds to get your answer in. All right, so the poll has closed. The correct answer is actually, excuse me, is actually true. I'm sorry, false. So the correct answer is false. There are trials for every stage, every type and stage of cancer. And for many cancers, a trial can be even the first option. So the answer was false. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, and so this question is, why should I be on a clinical trial? Is it A, you may benefit from having access to innovative cancer therapies? B, you'll receive a high level of care on the trial? C, you will contribute to cancer research and to a better future for cancer care and treatment for other people facing cancer? Or D, all of the above? And you have about 20 seconds left to answer. Okay, it looks like the majority of us have answered, so we're going to go ahead and close that out. And the correct answer was D, all of the above, all of the above. All right, so on to question number 4. Who can participate in a clinical trial? Is it A, clinical trials are appropriate for people of different types and ages, depending on the purpose and phase of the trial? Or B, only patients who have exhausted all other options can participate? Is it A or B? We'll give you a few more seconds to answer. All right, so everyone has answered, and the correct answer was A. A was the correct answer. All right, let's move on to question number 5. All right, and question number 5 is, I will be given a placebo if I'm a part of a clinical trial. Is that A, false? Many people think that clinical trials involve placebos, but only a small fraction of cancer clinical trials use them. Or is it B, true? All patients in the clinical trials are given placebos. Is that A, false, or B, true? You have about 5 more seconds to answer. All right, and all the answers are in, and the correct answer is A, that is false. That is false. No patient will only receive a placebo in a cancer clinical trial. If a placebo is used, it will be given in combination with standard therapy. All right, and we're moving on to the last question in our Test Your Knowledge poll. All right, the last question is, can I quit a clinical trial? Is the correct answer A, yes, you can leave a clinical trial at any time and for any reason? Or is it B, no, once you join a clinical trial, you cannot quit until the trial has been completed? Is it A or B? And we're going to give you about 10 more seconds on this one before we close it out. All right, so we've closed out question number 6, and the correct answer is A, yes. You can leave a clinical trial at any time and for any reason. It looks like most of us got those answers pretty correct, so congratulations. I'm handing it back over to Mia Johnson.
Wow, those were some great questions, and they showed us what we do and don't know about clinical trials. Next, I have the esteemed privilege of introducing our panelists. First, we have Dr. Rouse. She's a doctor at Texas Children's Cancer Center. a member of the bone marrow transplant and stem cell transplant program. Her clinical time is spent seeing leukemia and lymphoma patients, and she is board certified in pediatrics and pediatric hematology and oncology by the American Board of Pediatrics. Now, next we'll have Deidre Jones, who's a native of Birmingham, Alabama. She's a cancer survivor of myeloma in 2016 and a tumor in the left hemisphere of the brain, which was diagnosed in 1993. And she enrolled in a clinical trial in 2017. She often shares cancer is not a death sentence. And finally, we have Erica Pomares. Erica oversees and executes the local implementation of education programs and outreach initiatives to serve and support families impacted by blood cancer. She connects patients and caregivers to community resources and support services, including LLS's Information Resource Center, where highly trained oncology social workers, nurses, and health educators can assist patients through cancer treatment, financial and social challenges, and give accurate, up-to-date disease treatment and support information. And now we will have a brief informative video, and we will have a conversation with Ms. Pomares immediately after. Thank you so much. This webinar is an open conversation among sisters and guests. That's you that's logged on via Zoom and Facebook with our panelists. So post your questions and we will do our very best to direct them to the panelists during our sister talk. Let's start with Erica. Erica, you have firsthand experiences with families, children, and the community. Can you tell us more about the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and the work that the organization does to support patients diagnosed with the blood cancer?
Yes, thanks, Mia. So nearly 1.4 million Americans are living with or in remission from leukemia, lymphoma, or myeloma. So as the leading source of free blood cancer information, education, and support for patient survivors, families, and healthcare professionals, LLS helps patients navigate their cancer treatment and ensures they have access to quality, affordable, and coordinated care. Research will help us achieve an end to cancer, and how LLS has invested nearly $1.3 billion in research since 1949. In the meantime, patients need help before, during, and after their diagnosis and treatment. So LLS is the leading nonprofit that does just that. And so last year alone, our Information Resource Center handled nearly 20,000 inquiries from patients and their caregivers.
Okay, great information, great information. I have another question for you. How do you reach the community members, especially the Black community? Are there programs specifically designed to serve African Americans impacted by blood cancer?
Great question. And thank you for this opportunity to share what LLS is doing. So we are meeting people where they are. We're educating African Americans about myeloma. Myeloma is a type of blood cancer, but it has twice the incidence in African Americans than it does have in white Americans, especially African American males, and more likely not to get the latest treatments in as early as their white counterparts. So we want people to know what to look for, which I think is something really powerful. Most doctors aren't looking for myeloma. You have to rule out everything out first because it's not the most common type of cancer. So as a response to this disparity, LLS launched Myeloma Link in 2017 with two goals. One, to educate African American communities about myeloma and to help patients in these communities navigate the treatment landscape more effectively and cope with the disease. So Myeloma Link includes community awareness education programs and other outreach activities like virtual health fairs, virtual collaboration right now with senior centers, church outreach that include health sermons during church services. And finally, with Myeloma Link, we're presenting myeloma education programs for primary care providers at community health centers. We do this to outline the importance of primary care role in a timely referral to my hematologist oncologist.
Okay, so what does LLS offer to patients interested in joining or learning more about a clinical trial?
Another great question. So taking part in a clinical trial may be the best treatment choice for some blood cancer patients. If patients are interested in learning more about a clinical trial or finding a clinical trial, they can call the Leukemia Lymphoma Society at 1-800-955-4572. The Leukemia Lymphoma Society has registered nurses who work with patients and their caregivers one-on-one to find, enroll, and overcome barriers to clinical trials. Plus, LLS also has a clinical trial conversation guide for patients and caregivers to use to discuss clinical trials with their treatment team. If a patient would like to speak with a trained volunteer also who has a similar experience being on a trial, we can look into locating an available volunteer to speak to a patient through our Patterson Robinson First Connection program.
Okay, I have a really great question that's coming in from our guests. Here's the question. So let's say if you're a myeloma patient and you want to know what kind of financial aid does LLS offer for patients like that? How can you apply? What type of financial aid is there?
So LLS offers financial assistance programs to help individuals with blood cancer. Here at LLS, we always say it isn't enough to development the latest treatments if patients can't access them. So for instance, our copay assistance program, LLS offers up to $11,000, just an example, for myeloma patients if they're eligible, in financial support toward the cost of insurance premiums and medication copay assistance. We also have an LLS urgent need program, which is available to help pediatric and young adult cancer patients or adult blood cancer patients enrolled in a clinical trial who are in acute financial need. This program provides eligible patients with assistance for non-medical expenses like rent, mortgage, lodging, utilities, food, elder care, you name it. We provide that support to make sure that the patient is getting to their appointments. And then also we have the Susan Lang Paid and Forward patient travel assistance right now, as well. It is on hold right now, but please be checking our website periodically. And for new blood cancer patients, we have a patient aid stipend.
Wow. Thank you so much. I hope you all are taking notes because this is going to be very helpful for perhaps family, friends, our community. Thank you, Erica. Next, we'll have Dr. Rouse. Dr. Rouse, let's talk about clinical trials and who you determine a candidate to participate in these studies. My first question is, what exactly are clinical trials and why are they important to advance the health of African American communities, and are they safe?
This is an excellent question and one that I often receive. Clinical trials are truly important, and they essentially are the way we bring really exciting new therapies that could have potential benefits, sometimes curing people of their cancer. It's the way that we bring them from the laboratory where we've researched them to the clinic. They go through several phases, first to make sure that the treatment or the drug that we're studying is safe, then to identify what the safest dose is, then to identify and ensure that it actually can have benefit in patients. So clinical trials exist, like we learned in the poll, for a number of different cancers, including myeloma, including leukemia, including lymphoma. And one of the primary reasons that we've gotten so much better over the years at treating these types of cancers is because of discoveries we've made in clinical trials. It's really important that we make sure that we study therapies and drugs in all populations, including African Americans.
Okay, so who can participate in the clinical trials and what can patients do if they're interested in learning more about a clinical trial?
It's a really great question, and it's actually something that can seem quite overwhelming. That's why I love working with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Getting a diagnosis of a cancer or a loved one having a diagnosis of a cancer, you often are unsure whether you would be eligible for a clinical trial or whether you would receive what we call standard of care therapy. One of the easiest things to do is to talk to your healthcare provider. Ask them, what will my treatment be like? Are there available clinical trials? And they will help you navigate through whether or not you would be eligible for a clinical trial, but it's also a resource that the LLS provides. So I receive emails and inquiries all the time from very helpful nurses that work with LLS that often will connect me with a patient or family member who's wondering, hey, I talked to my doctor. They said they did not think I was eligible for a trial, but do you have additional information? So knowledge is power. And most importantly, you don't have to have all the information. LLS is really good at helping patients navigate.
Okay. Now, what do you tell patients in your practice who are considering a clinical trial? Like, what questions can patients ask their doctors if they are considering it?
I think the most important questions to ask are, how would my care differ if I were treated on a clinical trial or not? The reason that that's important is because with that one simple question, you can get answers to all the most important things. Number one, why do you think that this clinical trial would be more beneficial to me? What are the benefits to me? How will it change the potential side effects that I have? How will it change my schedule of treatment? Will I have to come back to the clinic or the hospital a bunch more times? Will I still be able to do the things that I'm doing now? So that simple question can give you a lot of information, and it's one that I really empower people to ask about. Your healthcare provider should be able to tell you the why do you think that this could be beneficial? What are the alternatives and what are potential risks?
Okay. I do have an additional question for you. I think it's a really great question considering our conversation this evening. What can be done to increase access to clinical trials for Black Americans? And why is it important for the African American community to be a part of this dialogue about clinical trials?
This is such an important question, and my number one answer is seminars like this. We have to increase awareness. We have to be met where we are. So I love programs that go into the community, go into churches, and kind of demystify this kind of mantra of clinical trials before a patient may even be eligible. It's really important to study all of these therapeutic drugs in patients of all types. Sometimes the only access you may have to a groundbreaking therapy that really could improve your outcomes is on a clinical trial. So we need to make sure that we have a seat at the table, and we need to make sure that when these therapies are being reported and when we're looking at outcomes, we're not just looking at a data set of individuals who all are from European ancestry, for example. So we have to have a seat at the table. We need to have access to the education, the information, and feel empowered.
Okay, Dr. Rouse, thank you so much. Again, this is some really great information. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us on this evening. Now we will hear from Deidre Jones. Her testimonial represents thousands and perhaps even millions. Deidre, we only have limited time remaining on this informative webinar, but we want you to take a couple of minutes and share your testimonial with hopes of inspiring all tuned in this evening. So now you have the floor.
And like Mia said before, I was diagnosed in 1993 with a left hemisphere brain tumor. In 2017, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and I was experiencing excruciating pain. I couldn't lay down on the bed. I was having lack of appetite. I was having frequent urinations and water retention. I did 3 ER visits, and the first time the doctor said I had urinary tract infection. The second time I had a bulging disc. The third time I went in, he said that he found something irregular with my heart. So they admitted me, did a heart ultrasound, and kind of found out I had congestive heart failure. And then he got on the phone to talk. The doctor got on the phone to talk to my daughter, and she was the one who suggested I get tested for multiple myeloma. Upon discharge, I went to my doctor. My doctor did a bone marrow biopsy, and that's when he found out I had the myeloma. At that time, I was totally in shock. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what my life expectancy was going to be. I didn't know the progression of the cancer. I was very scared because I just didn't know what the diagnosis was going to be. In November of 2016 is when I started receiving treatment for my myeloma. And in December of 2016, my doctor recommended that I do a clinical trial because my body had started rejecting the previous treatments that I was receiving. So in 2018, he started me on the clinical trial, 2017. He started me on the clinical trial, and within 6 weeks of being on this clinical trial, I went into remission, and currently I still am on remission and currently still under the clinical trial, only I'm doing the maintenance part of the clinical trial. What's keeping me going and what's keeping me motivated is my family, because when I started beginning my treatments, I became a grandmother, 2-time grandmother. And also the support and my focus on my family just keep me going. I also became not clinical, but a support group leader at that time with the Central Alabama Myeloma Group. And I'm currently working as a volunteer with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, coming on and telling people about trying to get African Americans aware of what multiple myeloma is, and working directly with the Myeloma Link, the Myeloma Link Foundation as well, trying to help people learn about myeloma. If I had one thing to say, I would say to others dealing with this cancer is that just know that you're not dealing with this alone, and it's not a death sentence. Don't focus on your life would have been. Focus on what your life is going to be, or what your life is now, because you have to learn to live with the diagnosis of having cancer. Continue to go to your doctor, continue to take your medications, continue to do chemotherapy treatments. And I have a saying that I always tell my cancer patients: I have cancer, but cancer don't have me. In other words, I don't let cancer take over my life. I finished my email.
Thank you so very much. We're going to now open up the conversation with our panelists and just ask a couple of questions. I want to start with you, Deidre. Why did you, I know you said your daughter recommended, but why did you make the personal decision to participate in the clinical trial? And what were your initial concerns? How did you overcome those?
My doctor recommended me for the clinical trial because he was at that time conducting the clinical trial. And speaking with him and also him giving me information about the clinical trial kind of made me decide on doing it. But I also went back to my family and talked with them to let them know exactly what to expect, what the clinical trial was all about. And since they were going to be like my support system, they needed to know exactly what was going on with the clinical trial and what to expect with it.
Okay. How did your quality of life improve as a result of the clinical trial?
I'm still able to do everything that I want to do. I'm still able to travel. I'm still able to drive. I'm still able to attend church, but not now because of the COVID. But I didn't let anything stop me from doing what I wanted to do. I did everything that I would normally do except work. That's the only thing that I wasn't able to do. I had to resign from my job, which was real hard. But other than that, I didn't let anything stop me from doing what I wanted to do.
Okay. And what would you tell others in our community about the benefits of clinical trials? What would you tell members in our community who have questions about them, but are really concerned about asking their doctor?
Do like I did. Do your research on the specific clinical trial that the doctor is recommending you for. Also, ask some questions as in, what are the side effects of the medication that I'm going to receive? What is the side effects of the chemical treatments or the chemical therapy that I'll be receiving? Just the normal questions that you would ask him at a regular doctor's office, ask him those questions as if this was a normal regular doctor's visit, except that you're receiving the clinical treatment for it.
Okay. Thank you so very much. I'm going to take just a couple of questions that I've received. Eric, I have a couple of questions for you. The first one is really simple. If you can just restate the phone number that people can call to speak to someone in LLS about programs and services.
Oh, definitely. So our call number is 1-800-955-4572, and I'll put it in the chat as well.
Thank you so much. Quick question, quick follow-up question. What support programs do you offer to patients diagnosed with a blood cancer?
Oh, Mia, we offer so many support and services for blood cancer patients. All of our services can be provided to families right in the comfort of their home. With our Information Resource Center, we have 14 information specialists who are master level oncology nurses and social workers, which are an essential point of initial contact inside and outside of LLS for personalized disease treatment and support information. And specialists continue to provide important answers from how to navigate changes in the healthcare insurance coverage to how to balance caregiving, work and childcare at home. In addition to all of that, they can provide patients with free educational material, connect patients to all of our other programs and services, as well as outside organizations. Families can also choose to connect with others through a local virtual support groups across the nation. Some of my counterparts are on this call right now, and they offer virtual support groups during this time. We have weekly online chats moderated by a social worker or a nurse. And we also have an LLS community, which is an online social network with 15,000 plus members. There are groups available for caregivers, young adults, different diseases and topics. And one of my favorite is our First Connection program, which is an incredible resource. Patients and caregivers can speak to highly trained LLS volunteers with a similar experience right over the phone. Patients can talk with someone who has really been through it. We also have an exciting new program that we offer, and it's the LLS Scholarship for Blood Cancer Survivors. I'm really excited to share this new program. It provides up to $7,500 to cover tuition for virtual or in-person vocational, 2-year or 4-year post-secondary education. The other services consist of resources for school personnel, in particular when a child that has been in treatment returns to school. We have free nutrition support for any type of cancer. I do want to make that note, not just blood cancer patients, but we also have free consultation with an oncology dietitian. We also have, again, disease education through our local virtual patient education programs and national podcasts and webinars.
Okay, and you actually answered a question I just received in the chat for you, which was if the information and resources if they're extended to persons with multiple myeloma. So it sounds like any cancer is something that you all are able to assist with.
For the nutrition, that can help support any type of cancer diagnosis, but all of our information is specifically for blood cancer.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the follow-up question to that is, can you explain just exactly what multiple myeloma is?
I'm going to leave that to Dr. Rouse, but it is a type of blood cancer.
Okay, Dr. Rouse.
Yes, that's a really great question. Multiple myeloma is not something that we learned in school, in elementary school or middle school or in high school, and most people not even in college. I, in fact, did not learn about it until I was in medical school. But the reason it's really important to know about multiple myeloma is because it does affect so many African Americans, especially men. And so essentially multiple myeloma is a collection of cells that are not supposed to be there that will build up typically in the bones, which is why, as Deirdre mentioned, you can have lots of non-specific symptoms, including pain and including some other laboratory abnormalities that sometimes are difficult to diagnose. The LLS website does a really good job, and I often send patients there, of really simplifying these different illnesses and talking about the common symptoms. And that's why it's so important for their outreach they do with primary care doctors also, because it's not something that is immediately diagnosable. Stories like Deidre's are unfortunately not that rare, where you go to the doctor and have a number of different things diagnosed before the ultimate test, the bone marrow test, is done to confirm that diagnosis.
And while I have your attention, I have a couple of additional questions from you from our guests and from the chat. First one, what are some of the barriers associated with the numbers of African Americans who sign up or don't sign up for clinical trials?
There are a lot of barriers. African Americans are disproportionately represented on clinical trials for all cancers and all diseases, in fact. And part of this, of course, is, as we know, there is historical precedence for us being more mistrusting of clinical research, for example, the Tuskegee experiment. However, because of historical things that have happened, there are a number of safeguards in place. And I think Deidre did a really good job of explaining how she talked with her doctor, she talked with her family. So number one, the mistrust. We often also don't think that clinical trials are appropriate for serious illness. So sometimes we'll have this notion of being experimented on. I think the poll questions were great in making it clear that patients who are diagnosed with cancer do not receive only placebo medication, for example. So I like to think of it as education and as access, and having the information being empowered. And also often these clinical trials are within large academic medical centers. So if you receive your care primarily at a primary oncologist who may be in a more rural area or a more urban area, sometimes you may not have the same access. This is why it's so important for organizations like NCBW, but also for LLS, to bring everything to people where they are, because you can have someone doing that groundwork and navigating, answering questions, and providing the information that you need.
One final question for you. Why is diversity so important in clinical trials?
Diversity is so important. It is important to know that a drug works the same in all types of people. This is really important, not only because there are some certain diseases that disproportionately affect some populations of people with different races and ethnicities, but also because we need to have access to the same drugs. One of the important comments that was just made in the chat was talking about increasing the number of African Americans in the bone marrow registry. This is important because in addition to being involved in clinical trials and represented and having access to these therapies, we also need to make sure that if someone were to need a bone marrow transplant, that they would have access to the same population of donors that someone who is white would. What this means is we have to be able to volunteer to say, if someone were to need a bone marrow transplant, I would be potentially available to be a match for them. It's a very simple procedure. This is something that we fall behind on. And so it's important to have the access, the education, the knowledge. And we want to be able to ask our doctors, has this been tested in people who look like me? And we want to feel confident when they respond, and we want to feel confident in our decisions.
Wow, this has been such an informative webinar. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you to LLS, as well as the program participants. Thank you, Dr. Rouse. Thank you, Ms. Jones. And thank you, Ms. Pomares. We appreciate your time and appreciate you all sharing the knowledge that we need in our community regarding blood cancer. Now I'm going to turn this over to Erica Pomares so that she may give us final remarks on behalf of LLS.
Thank you, Mia. I just want to thank you all. I want to thank Sarita, Madam President, Bridget, everyone on this call. Thank you so much, Dr. Rouse, for your expertise, and Deidre for sharing your story. On behalf of LLS, I just like to express my appreciation to all the participants for also taking the time, and everyone out there during your busy day to attend this seminar. I just want to thank again the National CBW. I would like to close my remarks with just clinical trials are not a last resort, and that it is complex, but we are here to help. You do not have to navigate this alone. You do not have to navigate a blood cancer alone. So if you need any type of service or support, do not hesitate to reach out to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Thank you again, and we look forward to continue this partnership with you all, and wishing you all good health and wellness. Thank you.